Hello, everyone. I'm Mark Plaster, and this is EP Talk, a place where emergency physicians come to talk about everything that's important to us, sometimes personal, professional, and breakthroughs, all kinds of stuff. But today, my guest is a longtime friend, a decades friend, Bill Green, who's kind of the epitome for me of the freedom and the spirit of emergency medicine, because Bill, a long time ago, saw a problem, and we'll talk about this in a minute. Saw a problem that he attacked and basically built a product for. It's been very successful. You're probably familiar with T-Ring, but he's got some other things to talk about. But the thing that Bill exemplifies for me, though, is the freedom that we found in emergency medicine. And I want Bill to show you. Bill lives in Ireland. This podcast is coming from Ireland, and he's 6, 7 hours ahead of us right now, and but I wanted him to show you what he looks out on, guys and gals. I want you to see where Bill lives, and this is again. Welcome to the podcast, Bill. It's good to see you, but I want them to see what you just showed me.
You got it. And in regards to freedom, Mark, my wife made this decision for me. But I've enjoyed living in Ireland. So yeah, this is our little village.
Oh man, I saw this before. Look at this, guys. This is where Bill Green lives.
This is our little part of Ireland, and a scary village.
Oh wow, that's fantastic. And wow, quite a place, quite a place. And absolutely, I will come visit you. You better have a bedroom for me, because I'm going to come see you.
Open invitation. I'm working on your room as we speak, Mark. I'm working on it. It's where I live when I'm in trouble. It's a doghouse in the garden, but you can stay there.
Oh,
make it nice for both of us.
Oh, that's fantastic. I want to go back for the people who don't know you like I do. I want you to start back very briefly. I know you've got a bunch of things to talk about, but I want you to start back very briefly with T-Ring and how that evolved, and quickly tell us a little bit about that as a product. I told you I want to promote this, and you've got some other things after that, though. But tell me about T-Ring.
Yeah, I mean, you'll recall the T-Ring was kind of born out of, I was chairman of a department, and we had 3 finger cases that had bad outcomes over a span of like 10 months. 2 were tourniquet related, and you'll recall forever we used what we had, right? We had
rubber bands, Penrose drain. I mean, you name it. Yeah, and the thing it was, I mean, did you have any idea how much pressure you're putting on the finger? No.
Crazy, yeah. And I didn't know it was a big deal until I went to the literature. I mean, I was like, geez, guys, what do we do? How do we handle this? We got to avoid doing this, right? And I went to literature, and there's more articles than you can imagine about tourniquet pressures, digital tourniquet pressures, And the bottom line was that I found. One is we should always be using a tourniquet on our finger exams. Because nearly 25% of all ED litigation is wound related, and most of that's missed tendon and nerve injuries, and most of that's the finger, right? And
I told you one time that the very first litigation I ever had was one of my docs. I was a director. One of my docs missed a tendon injury, and it was just because, like you say, you didn't explore it well enough to be able to see it.
Yeah, and there's been cases that I reviewed that plaintiff attorneys will argue that if you haven't used a tourniquet, that you haven't met the standard of care, which is explore the wound to its full depth through a full range of motion in a bloodless field. They'll say, hey, it wasn't a bloodless field if you didn't have a tourniquet, right? So look, a lot of docs that I run into and chat with, at ASAP or other conferences, they say, oh yeah, I use a tourniquet. I use it when I got an amputation or there's blood spurting all over the place. It's like, well, yeah, it's great because you got to use it there. But the injuries we miss, and the ones that get litigated, are those little 1 centimeter innocuous looking finger lacks. You go, oh, hey, there's nothing there. And you miss it, because you're dabbing it and you're trying to see it when you're bleeding. But anyhow, so the 2 things were, one is you should always use a tourniquet so you can decrease the chance of missing an injury. And then the other thing that I found was everything that we ever had available applies crazy pressure to the digit. All you need for a finger is, between 100 and 130 millimeters of mercury to achieve hemostasis. And the study showed that the best one, which was a rolled surgical glove, cutting it off and rolling up, was, like 560. The ring stuff that we use, the 4 different size rings, was over 600, and the Penrose was over 800. Yeah. And you say, well, geez, you got away with it. you know.
I always try the more pressure, the better.
Depending on what we're talking about, but yeah, so it was kind of crazy stuff. So look, the goal of the tiering was, look, I wanted to come up with something that anybody could use on any size digit. The pressure is going to be the same across the board, and ultimately after a lot of trial and error, a lot of different materials, different sizes, we were able to achieve that. So you can literally put this on an infant's pinky or your great toe, and the pressure is going to be 150 millimeters of mercury plus or minus 5 millimeters of mercury.
That's
So
crazy.
it's really you can't cause an injury, and it's enough pressure to achieve hemostasis. So it's kind of the sweet spot.
Do you have one there I actually have one in my case. Do you have one?
Can I yell at my wife to get one? So original T-ring, the one you recall
Yep.
from way back.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, so again, one size fits all. These two are your little 2-point discriminator, check your nerve exam. The other thing, when I review cases, people miss nerve injuries and they've never documented a sensory exam. So
Yep.
you basically slide it on.
Yep, that's right. That's simple.
One feature of this, which some people forget sometimes, is you can snap it and then you can stretch it. That gets it over flaps, deformities, so you can get it on and off without contacting the wound. And since loads of docs don't read instructions, that's where the flex came. I don't know if you recall this one. This one you don't snap, you can just stretch it. So you can get it really big to get that over a hanging flap. So the idea with that is, look, you don't want to drag it over and exacerbate an injury. So it's easy to get it on and off without touching the wound. So those are the two different ones that we have. The T-ring flex is kind of really taken over in EDs. The T-ring itself is great for home use, first aid kit use, because you can apply it yourself really easily.
Things that you probably, the old slicer injuries, where you get something at the end of the finger, and you really just need to get hemostasis, and so that if how the gizmo that pretty much you don't need anything, you just need to stop the bleeding.
Yeah, the mandolin. Yeah. Well, yeah, and you're exactly right. Because and look, I used to do this too. We were taught. For us, we were taught, look, if you have the tip, even that little tip that is not going to survive, sew it in place and just to help stop the bleeding and a natural bandage. I've seen people cauterize them, Surgicel, all kinds of stuff, and that stuff's all a mess. I mean, and this is probably one of the greatest tidbits for people that aren't doing it is for those exact injuries. T-ring on, I'll usually soak them for a couple minutes in either lidocaine gel or 1% lidocaine that you otherwise would inject. So no ditch blocks at all. You just soak them for a couple minutes, wash it off, dry it off, and then just hold it level and fill the whole defect with glue, with Dermabond. And you give it a minute, you apply another layer, wait a minute, you take the T-ring off, and it works great because the glue will fill all those little nooks and crannies, so it seals all those little bleeding capillaries. So I watch providers spend 30 minutes trying to get these things stop bleeding.
No.
And literally you're done. I mean, it's one of those ones where I see these come in from urgent cares all the time, and I bang my head against the wall because my kids can do this. You put the T-ring on and you put glue on it, right? And as soon as they walk through our ED doors, they're going to leave with a bill for $1,200, And they spent 2 hours at the urgent care, and then they come and wait in our waiting room for 4 hours, and then it's like, guys, anybody can do this, and literally you're done in about 3 minutes. And the nice thing is that we did a study to see how long that lasts, and on average it's about 12 days. So with all the other stuff, they're doing soaks and dressing changes and all that stuff. You don't have to do anything. You just wait for it to fall off, and a month later you'll have your final result 4 to 6 weeks later. But it's great. I mean, they're literally in and out. And like I said, no dig blocks, no laceration trays, T-ring, some glue, and you're good to go.
So what are you working on now? Okay, you've given us the quick and easy. And I'll say this to my audience. Okay, if you don't have this in your ER, you're really messing up. Okay, this is making your life so much easier. We see these all the time, and this will make your life so much easier. The patients will love you for it. They'll look at it and go, my gosh. And frankly, are they available at drugstores? Are you able to get them in drugstores?
So we have outlets through like first aid kit companies. We sell a finger cut kit, which, what I tell people is probably, 85 to 90% of the finger injuries I see in the ED don't need to be there, right? Because the vast majority of them are the 1 to 2 centimeter finger lacs. it's probably less than 2 to 3% of these that have a deep tissue injury. So the vast majority of them are 1 to 2 centimeter finger cut, or skin cut. If they were anywhere else on your body except maybe your face, you'd put a Band-Aid on it, right?
Right.
So the idea of the finger cut kit is if you can achieve hemostasis, you have options. I mean, most people end up in the ED because they can't get it to stop bleeding, right? And then providers open up a lac tray, they do a DIG block, they put in 2 or 3 sutures. And the study out of UCSF, 20 years ago basically said there's no benefit to that. If you do nothing other than wash it out and put a Band-Aid on it, these will heal fine.
Yeah.
So the idea with the finger cut kit, or even what we do now in the emergency department is, we'll start with, doing your sensory exam, put the T-ring on to achieve hemostasis, soak them. So if it's not a wound that I otherwise feel like I got to get in there and muck around and scrub it out, I hardly ever do a DIG block. So I'll soak the wound, wash it out, document my wound exploration. And now that the vast majority of these are just skin cuts, and now that I have guaranteed hemostasis, I'm doing wound edge approximation with the T-strip, which I'll show you in a second.
Okay.
A vial of Dermabond, T-ring off. If it's an injury that's over the extensor surface, I'll put them in a splint for 4 or 5 days.
Yeah.
And just tell them, hey, this is going to slough off in 10 to 12 days, and you're done. No suture removal, no follow-up visits, and it literally saves you 25 minutes. I mean, you've experienced, you're working in the ED, they put a finger lac in your area of the department, and for the next 2 or 3 hours, you walk by that room and say, look, I'm really sorry. I'm just really busy. I'll get to you as soon as I can, but I know that I need 25 minutes to do a DIG block.
Right.
Let it kick in, wash them out, sew them up, and so you never get to it. In our place, what we do now is, they'll put the T-ring on out of triage. The tech will wash it out. They'll put them in a chair and they'll come get me and say, hey, it's all ready. And they'll have, T-strip and glue. And I'm literally done in 5 minutes. Now that patient, we took our ED transit time for this particular injury, for finger injuries, from over 3 hours to about 45 minutes.
Yeah. Okay. Tell us about T-strip now. Okay.
Yeah. So T-strip basically is, think Steri-strip, but it's a wound mesh that's porous.
Okay.
The idea with this is you're using it to approximate the wound edges. Really, the only way you can go wrong using Dermabond on a finger or any wound is if you get the glue inside the wound edges, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of finger lacerations have a bunch of little flaps or jagged edges. So try to glue those. A lot of times you get the glue inside the wound, and now you've created a barrier for the wound to heal, right?
Right.
So the nice thing about this is it's clear and it's a mesh, so you can see right through it. So
okay.
I don't know if you can get a sense of that, but that's
perfect.
Yeah. Yep. So that's the mesh. So basically, you apply one side of it to one edge of the wound. You pull it across the digit to close the wound, and you can manipulate it to get the wound edges right where you want them. And when you're happy with it, you go ahead and wrap it around. One vial of Dermabond Mini has enough glue to completely cover one T-strip. You glue the whole thing, make sure you get the edges and the ends, you let it dry, and you're done. Again, this will just slough off in about 10 to 12 days. So it's great because it's great for kids, right?
Yeah.
What's your favorite thing in the emergency room? Holding a kid down that's screaming and kicking to put a needle in his finger, I had a case, I'll tell you really quick. I had a kid who was about 18 months old, has about a 1 centimeter laceration across the dorsum of his digit.
Mm-hmm.
T-ring on, you could see from a few feet away that it didn't even get through the sub-Q, right?
Yeah.
So I washed it out, dried it off, T-strip, glue, T-ring off. I was done in about 3 minutes. Mom looks at me and she looks kind of annoyed. She looks at me and says, "That's it?" I said, "That's it." Thinking, hey, I'm the hero here, right? And she goes, and again, she looked pissed off. She goes, I was here about a year ago with my 4-year-old, same injury. The doc had 2 brute guys hold him down. He stuck a needle in his finger about 4 or 5 times. My son screamed for the next 25 minutes while he sutured his finger. And then 10 days later, when I took him to, his pediatrician buddy, Dr. Joe, to say, hey, we're getting your sutures out, he started screaming and crying, So it's like, hey, if you want to avoid all that stuff, this is the answer for you. T-ring on, strip, glue, and literally you're done. So, and the nice thing is, so this, I designed this, for fingers, knowing the results of these studies that show, hey, look, we just need to clean them out. We don't need to sew all of them, but it's like, we needed something in between, because tell
Right.
mom that, she's waited for 3 hours for you to put a Band-Aid on her finger, right? So this bridges that gap, right? So you wash it out, you clean it, that's all you need to do, but we're going to put the T-strip on to approximate the wound. You put the glue on, everybody's happy.
Yeah.
And
Also, you're just not convinced in some of these situations that the glue is going to be strong enough to hold it together. It needs a little bit of extra structure. And what you've actually done there is create an architecture that the glue can work with. Yeah.
totally. And the nice thing again is that this will prevent you from getting glue in the wound. So the mesh holds onto the glue. So even if you didn't approximate it perfectly, if you left a little gap in the skin, it's not going to let it drip down into the wound. So basically you end up with this mesh glue combination that completely seals the wound, and it'll last for 10 to 12 days and then fall off.
That's incredible. Is it just that one size or do you have multiple bigger sizes?
Yeah, no, so it's just one size, to answer your question. I mean, we've been asked to and considered doing larger sizes, but the nice thing about this, like I said, is it's just the surface area that one Dermabond Mini will cover.
Yeah.
And if you need to use 2 or 3 or 4 of them, and you can go to our website and look at some of these cases. We have some big lacerations that are closed with 6 T-strips. And just if you need more tension, rather than going parallel to the wound, you just cross the wound to just grab the skin more. But no, we even though it was designed for fingers, they're great for those superficial skin avulsions that we see all the time in older folks, where you just get those flaps. And I don't know about you, but I was taught that, oh yeah, you put a steri strip on the skin and then you suture through the steri strip and pull it together. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And so look, it just makes it a lot easier. And the great thing is that it's transparent, so you can see what you're doing. We did a study initially to see, hey, how does it work using steri strips to close these and not sutures? And what I found is you couldn't see through the steri strip. You can't see the wound edges underneath.
Right.
And plus the glue doesn't penetrate the steri strip, so you really lose the adherence that you get with the T-strip. So yeah, finger lax, great.
So netting, you're telling me that is actually a net. The T-strip is actually a net.
Yeah, it's a surgical mesh that I sourced, and then I don't know how well you can see that.
I can. Yeah, we can.
So that's all mesh. So you figure probably 80% of the surface area is air. It's porous. It's just the mesh to hold on to it, to give you the ability to approximate the wound, add tensile strength to the wound,
Cool.
and it works great.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So look, I use it everywhere now. Facial lacerations for kids, or anyone. If I use it over the extensor surface, I'll immobilize it for a few days. Tell them not to soak it. They can shower and pat it dry, but it's kind of same instructions you'd give with Dermabond or sutures.
Yeah.
But it's just, look, it's all about time saving stuff, and making it easier.
I mean, who wants digital blocks? I mean, they hurt.
Yeah, I tell you. I mean, it's all about you. I mean.
And I'll be honest with you, different people are good at putting them in, and some are not good at putting them in. And I've seen digital blocks with a couple of shots, and the whole digit is completely numb. And I've seen people really struggle trying to get anesthesia in a digital block, and they're so if you could avoid that, I mean, for crying out loud, avoid it.
Yeah, and back to the pressures, because there are other, there's MacGyver stuff that people still use. There's other products on the market, but there's been numerous pressure studies now, and a couple pressure studies that have compared the T-ring directly to one of our competitors that was a one size fits all, but now they've digressed to a 2 size because they couldn't get the one size to apply the appropriate pressure. But in all the studies, including their own studies that they did, the T-ring in every case applies the lowest pressure. And if you look at the literature in terms of tourniquet safety, the one thing they bang on about is you always got to lose the least amount of pressure
Yeah.
necessary to achieve hemostasis, because anything higher than that, you're increasing the risk that you'll cause a neurovascular injury. And it's you would think, really, does that really happen? But you look at the literature, and it's more common than you think. They did
Right.
one study, similar devices on limbs, two studies. One 70%, the other one 75% of them demonstrated nerve dysfunction after tourniquet use that lasted from 2 to 6 months.
I can actually show you a finger that got amputated, and I won't say it was because of the I don't know why, but I had neurovascular dysfunction for almost 2 years following that.
And if a tourniquet was applied, I mean, because I tell you, the tip, look, I mean, at the tip, you basically have nerve distribution from both sides, so that's why, I tell people, like, you really don't need to do a sensory exam if you have a tip injury, because it's going to be fine. It's really when you're talking about, it's more proximal to the middle and the proximal phalanx that for sure, you got to do your 2-point discrimination. But if you got an injury at the tip and you have any, neuropraxia, and a tourniquet was used, it's from the tourniquet,
Okay. Yeah, I think you're right.
Look, so I mean, if you try to put anything on like one of my kids' fingers other than this, I'd say, yeah, no.
Well, you got anything else in the pipeline you're working on right now?
Yeah, I do. There's a couple things, I mean, look, for me, it's what's been the biggest pain in my behind in terms of, so I've looked at some stuff for tooth injuries.
Okay.
6 months ago, my son was at his, flag football practice. Practice was over, but they did one more play, and he knocked his tooth partially out, and he was bummed. I'm like, took him home, put him on the bed, did a periapical block, and just shoved it in. And actually, I mean, it's like, wow, that looks great, And he's like, I mean, your family doesn't think you're a good doctor, right? I mean, it looks great. Yeah, it looks okay. But, they always tell me I'm useless, when they come to me with it. And then went to the dentist the next day, and they had this really cool thing where they could, put a bridge. I've used stuff in the ED for dental injuries. It just is cumbersome and doesn't work real great.
Right.
So that's one thing. And then the other thing is a universal sized, another device for fingers. That more information coming.
Interesting.
You'll be the first to see it.
Interesting. Absolutely. And are you going to go to? Unfortunately, I'm not going to ASEP this year. It'll be the first time in almost 30 years, probably, that I'm not going to ASEP. But will you be there this year?
I'll be there. If you told me that, I don't know that I would have gone, Mark. I mean, I get on a flight tomorrow. I land in LA Thursday, and I'll fly up to San Fran on Friday. So if anybody comes by the booth and sees me, I'll probably be sideways. Yeah, I'm gonna go. It's close enough. It's an hour flight, first time in a couple of years. So yeah, I'll be there for sure.
That's great.
It's people that you haven't seen for a long time,
Yeah. Well, that's exactly that. That's what ASEP turned out to be for me. For the last 10, 15 years, is just kind of seeing all the folks that I don't get to see throughout the year. So I'm bummed that but it's not going to happen for us this year, unfortunately. But maybe next year, we'll see. But in the interim, I definitely we're going to be in England next year, so I will definitely come by and bum off you.
Here's the deal, Mark. I can turn left out my front door and walk about 70 feet to a pub. I'll buy a pint of Guinness, or we can go straight across the street about 100 feet, and there's a pub, and I'll buy another pint of Guinness. So as a bonus to all your listeners, just give them my email when they come to Ireland. I'll show them the village, and
great.
It's worth a visit for sure.
Well, we're at the end of our time, and I just want to say to all of our viewers, listeners, that Bill is the epitome of the free-spirited emergency doc who sees a problem and takes care of it, lives the kind of life that we've all desired the kind of freedom and that's the free. I hate to get so philosophical about it, but that's the freeing of the mind that happens a lot of times in our profession, where people see a problem and say, let's tackle, let's try to figure out how to fix this. And Bill's done that, and I applaud you. I know you've enjoyed the benefits of it. Your family may be like my family and think that you don't know anything at all, but I know you do. So, so
There you go.
thank you everyone for joining us today, and take Bill up on it and find him in England or not now, England but Ireland, and I'll also drop by the booth in ASAP. So
Mark,
take care.
great
Good
to see you.
Bill. Take care. Bye bye.